What is up, guys? Private Eye Russ here. Welcome to another episode of the Private Eye Russ Show. I am your host, Private Eye Russ, owner, operator, full-service private investigation and consulting firm. Links will be in the description below. You need to email me if you need an investigator or one-on-one personal development coaching. I run investigators all around the country and around the globe. So enough said about that. So let's get into the meat and potatoes of this particular video and reaction and kind of warning, and I'll also tell you guys some of the dealings I've had with this particular situation and the stark contrast in how things are handled depending on your status. All right, so let's see. Fair use.
A scary story out of Florida. Police arresting two suspects accused of using an Apple AirTag to abduct a couple outside of their own house.
What's your first name? Your last name's Charles, right?
Yeah.
Lewis? Is that
Yeah.
your first name? All right. Can you just step up in the car real quick for me?
These two suspects are accused of sticking the location tracker onto the bottom of the couple's SUV and then following their vehicle before holding them at gunpoint. Chief Deputy Joseph Maurer at Hillsborough County Sheriff's Office joins us.
Okay, this is a common tactic used nowadays. So the AirTag they stuck in their car, incredibly accurate. Out of all the Bluetooth tracking devices, it's Bluetooth low energy really. But out of all those, the AirTags are the most accurate. They are more accurate than an actual dedicated GPS tracking devices that private investigators and stalkers use. And so it's so simple to put something on somebody's car. So this is how long it takes. Anybody, an amateur, can do it in this amount of time, 5 seconds, and the device is stuck in your car, literally. I've seen guys, some of the guys that do work for me, guys that are surveillance specialists. That's what they do for a living. I've seen them put tracking devices on people's cars while the people were in the cars in gear, and they're at a traffic light or they're in a mall parking lot or they stop somewhere, and these guys will sneak up, put a tracking device underneath your car, and you'll never even know they did it. That's how slick it is and how quick it is, but they're very, very quick. All right, so, and it's impossible to see to the untrained eye unless you're watching video live or later on. So the way people will set things up is this. You got a high-end car, say you're flashing some cash, say you got a nice watch on, whatever it is, there are people out there who want to take your stuff. So instead of trying to rob you right there, what they do now is, okay, instead of just taking what's in their pocket, let's go in their house and rob and burglarize the house. In this case, it was a home invasion robbery, which is a lot more dangerous. They're being held at gunpoint, but normally what they'll do is find out where you live and roll up in your house and take all your stuff. In other cases, it has been used against clients of mine that were being stalked by ex-girlfriends, ex-boyfriends, ex-wives, ex-husbands, or just somebody who randomly just thought you were somebody they were interested in and wanted to stalk you and find out more about you. All right, does this happen? This happens a ton. Most people are being tracked and have no idea they're being tracked. I'll give you a good example. I was going to do, some of you know, besides being a private investigator, I'm also a licensed bail bondsman. A bail bonds associate of mine wanted me to go with him on a kind of a high risk pickup, and so bail bondsmen will hire me to help find their skips. So I'll track them down. So he wanted me to go with him to pick up this individual. I get it. The guy was kind of a dangerous guy, right? So we're traveling in a car, and I'm using, just using my phone. My car is in the parking lot of his office. And so what I found was I use a couple of different apps, but this particular app I had running in the background, it alerted me that we were being tracked by an AirTag. So, I don't want to alarm people, so I said to him, "Hey, man, you don't have an iPhone, do you?" Like, I knew he had an Android, but sometimes guys have two phones. I have more than one phone. I got several phones, So, for work purposes, I'm not doing any shady stuff. Well, shady stuff for work, but you know what I mean. Not nefarious anyway. So he goes, "No, I got an iPhone. Why, bro?" I said, "Dude," I think I think you got an AirTag in the car, man. I said, do you have any bags or anything like that you're trying to track or something?" He said, "No." Okay, so before we get to the guy's place, we stop the car, and I get out this app, and this app is actually really, really good. It helps you narrow down where where devices might be, very, very locally. And so it takes away a lot of the guesswork. You're not searching the whole car, you're just searching a small local area. So he says, okay, and we pull over and I get out my app, we find out where it is. I had to crawl into the car a little bit. It was by the front bumper, front right. And I got it off. It was hidden in a little like sticky case. It wasn't sticky. It was magnetic. It was stuck under, under the bumper of his car. So he looked at it. And I was like, dude, somebody's trying to track you. And he's like, I don't even know who. And so there's no way to tell how long it's been there. And so what we did was we put it in a bag in the car. We kept it in the car, and we kept doing our thing. We picked up the guy, went to the jail. And then later on, we kind of, looked a little bit more into it. It's hard to tell sometimes who might have it. Sometimes you can, sometimes you cannot. Are there ways to track the people who are tracking you? Yes, they are. There are. It's more difficult with air tags because they have they never use the same MAC address. And so, like, say, a tile tracker, it'll have a MAC address, and that MAC address will remain static. Air tags will change their MAC address, like I think it's every 5 or every 10 minutes. So every time you get an alert, it'll show a different MAC address. It'll be the same device, but it'll show a different MAC address, which makes it more difficult to isolate if someone's actually following you. With the other ones, you actually can do that. Maybe one day, if you guys want to hear a really nerdy video, and hopefully you guys won't judge me too harshly. I am somewhat of a nerd. My son and I put together now we didn't discover this or make it up ourselves. What we did have to rewrite some of the code. There's a Bluetooth sniffer that allows you to sniff not just the packets, but also to where the packets are being sent. And so, and so there's a whole bunch of nerdy stuff behind that. But so my point is, with him being a bail bondsman, it could be someone who's worried about getting picked up by him. It could be so many different things. He did question his wife. Neither his wife neither his wife or anybody else in his family have iPhones. So it was kind of a mystery. We didn't want to go too far into it. He wound up just destroying the device. I encouraged him to report it to the police. He did not. So I've had cases where clients have had things put on their cars, not for the purpose of burglarizing them, but for stalking purposes. Several, matter of fact, men, women, all types of people. So this would be the typical progression of that particular case. They would say, hey, I think I'm being stalked, ex-boyfriend, ex-girlfriend, I moved out of state, did this, that, and the other thing. They keep showing up. They showed up at my place. They showed up at my job. What can I do? Okay, so the first thing I do is I'll order a sweep of the vehicle. Now, I can do some of those sweeps myself. If it's just a Bluetooth low energy device, I can find it. In some cases, I can find some of the dedicated GPS tracking devices. Not in all cases, but in some cases I can. Now, for more complicated cases, I order a sweep done by some of the technicians I have access to. They don't work for me directly. They are not cheap. That's why I've learned how to do some of this stuff myself. They are incredibly expensive, and you know what? Fair enough. They should be. They bring, sometimes more than $100,000 worth of electronic detection equipment. They've got decades and decades of experience plus formal training. So their skills are light years ahead of mine. I can do some basic things more than most people can, but not to the extent that they can. So, and so in cases where we need to order a sweep, we do that. But so I go ahead and do the sweep myself. And so I find a Bluetooth low energy tracking device. Now, it was not an AirTag. It was a tile tracker. And so the thing about these tile trackers and some of these Bluetooth low energy devices is that they have an incredible amount of endurance. So I had my son carry a tile wallet tracker, right? This was before he was 18. He's 19 now. So he's been carrying that in his wallet since he was 17 years old. I just got an alert this past week, about a low battery. So the batteries last an incredible amount of time. So then, and that's what makes them actually more effective than GPS trackers. Some of them are more accurate than dedicated GPS trackers. And GPS trackers, you've got to keep changing the batteries out regularly. Otherwise, it'll just run out of juice. So you get the device, you get a statement, you write up a report, like a licensed private investigator should. You take it to the whatever local law enforcement, whether it's a police agency or a sheriff's agency, and you make out one of their reports and you give them the device. They put it in an envelope, put it in a box, they put everything all together, and they leave it alone, and you will never hear from them again. All right, that's the usual response. The only time I had a more aggressive response was with a client of mine that is they're a politician. I won't go into what they do or who they are, but they are a politician. We found one on their car. Their car was being driven by one of their children, and so obviously, their dad was like, "Hey, somebody's stalking my daughter, Russ, get on it." Right? So okay, and so we did our thing with the Bluetooth sniffer. We found the device. We left it on the car. And what we did was we compiled a bunch of data. We presented the law enforcement agency with the people we suspected. Based on that, once they had that information, man, you want to see a different response? Holy smokes. The only thing they didn't do was call the National Guard. Now, this is a politician's kid, so obviously he's very well connected. They're going to do whatever they need to do to make sure this guy's happy, right? Everybody else, you're kind of going to be in kind of a legal no man's land. So these cases aren't sexy cases. And so cops, unless you're a celebrity or unless you're a supermodel or something like that, they're not really going to be jumping on top of that. So what we had to do was, on several occasions, we've had to intercede in a more, say, direct manner than most people would want to. So this woman was being stalked. She didn't want to be stalked anymore. We kind of set a little bit of an ambush up for the dude that was stalking her, and we gave him a good talking to. No laws were broken. No one was harmed. Keep your, stuff before you guys start thumbing out admonitions or whatever else. At the end of the day, we've had to do that on several occasions and get people to back off. And in a lot of cases, all people have to understand is that, look, we've got you under surveillance. Here are pictures of you. And this is kind of what I've done more than once. This is a screenshot from a video of you placing this on their car. If we decide to prosecute, this, that, the other thing, but not just prosecute. I actually told one dude, I said, "Won't just prosecute you, man." He's a social media guy. Won't go into who he is. But I said, I won't just do that. And yeah, he was stalking his girlfriend. He stopped. After this, I said, I won't just go to the police. I will make a YouTube channel and social media profiles just dedicated to outing you and exposing you to all your subscribers. He's got quite a few subscribers, way more than me, way more than me. But he backed off and he stopped. And from what I can tell, he hasn't done that again. And so sometimes people just need that fright of, oh my gosh, I'm going to be exposed or I'm going to be arrested. Now, if someone's a really dedicated stalker who wants to hurt somebody, different story altogether. That first case we had, to this day, she hasn't been bothered again. We haven't had anybody continue after that. And so people like this, they want to sneak around in the darkness. Last thing they want is to be dragged into the light. So, so the police going this far, I think the only reason this response, this particular activity elicited this level of response was because they pulled these people out of their cars and, at gunpoint and then dragged them in the house. So potentially carjacking, then definitely home invasion, robbery, aggravated assault, all these different things. So they went after them. But typically, Apple and other other providers, these manufacturers, whether it's Tile, Samsung, and there's so many others. There's so many that don't even have names, any recognizable names. Typically, they don't respond to law enforcement inquiries. They just leave them alone.
With more. Good morning to you.
Good morning, Ainsley.
Good
Thank you
morning.
for having me.
Well, thanks for coming on. And you actually used that AirTag to track down the suspects, right? What happened?
Yeah, so absolutely. So after the initial deputies arrived on scene, our detectives arrived on scene, and we were able to canvass the area. And then we noticed on the victim's vehicle there was an Apple AirTag affixed to the rear bumper. So the detectives, with all tenacity and diligence, followed up on that, worked with Apple. We were able to identify who purchased that Apple AirTag, and it linked to Mr. Charles and the suspects
Wow, the
in this
suspects,
case.
I know that they put them in their garage, closed the door. I'm sure they were scared out of their minds. And then their house alarm went off, or some sort of an alarm went off. And then they ran away. So thank goodness the couple is okay. But, you know, when it comes to these air tags, it's estimated 3.4 million people ages 16 and above who reported being stalked or tracked in 2019. 80% indicated technology tracking was involved. And I know these air tags, there's been a rise in 40% in buying these types of electronic tracking, at least from 2016 to 2019. So it's probably even higher than that now. What do we do if someone does this to us? How do we handle that situation?
Well, that's a great question, Ainsley. You know, if there is an Apple AirTag notification that you find suspicious on your phone, you're unaware of an Apple AirTag, it's just what I told our community here. If that happens to you, notify law enforcement. We'll send a deputy there and we will track that down. Anything that is suspicious when it comes to technology or even your situational awareness about you, call us. That's what we're there for, and we can track that down.
Yes, that's what you should do. That's not the typical response. I think this response was elicited because, number one, it seems to be a nice neighborhood, probably a nice high-end car. I can't tell what it is. I know some of you car guys can tell. Maybe the grill is an Audi grill. I don't know what it is. But for most normies, that's not going to be the response. Mostly you're going to file a report, and they're going to take the report, and that's going to be the end of it unless something else presents itself and kind of makes it low-hanging fruit. They're not working that hard for these things. You know, this is an exception. This is not the rule. So, yes, you should report it. However, you should be on your guard, and you should download one of those apps I told you about so you can make sure that you're not being tracked without your knowledge. All right, so if you do have an iPhone, it will alert you if if any Apple device is traveling with you, especially an AirTag. If you don't have an iPhone and an AirTag is on your vehicle or traveling with you on your person somehow, you'll need an independent application like the one I showed you guys, and it will let you know that a device is traveling with you. So this particular device, this is how it looks. Literally, it works really, really well. It helps you scan and detect, and you can isolate each individual device and find them individually if there's more than one. So anyway, let's keep going. Fair use.
And stop a violent crime. You know, our community was attacked that night. Violent crime is our number one priority. That's Sheriff Cronister's number one priority. And they're using technology, sophisticated criminals to do that.
Well, Chief, if an AirTag is close to me and someone puts one in my pocketbook or someone watching, does it pop up on our phone? Does it say you're being tracked?
Well, you'll get an Apple AirTag notification on your phone, and you'll know, well, this is kind of odd. I don't have an Apple AirTag. That should be alarming to you, so much so that you should contact law enforcement, because there can be nefarious activity as indicated to happen in our community right here.
Yeah, why was this couple targeted?
Well, you know, we suspect they are business owners, so they own a restaurant. They typically handle a lot of cash.
There you go. So someone knew there was a lot of cash going through these places. That's what happens a lot of retail locations. Some of them do get a lot of cash, and so maybe they think, you know, maybe they thought he was bringing the cash home. If you're smart, you'll hire a company to come pick things up. You'll keep a safe, hire a company to come pick things up, or at the very least take them to the bank yourself. But even going to the bank, you should be aware of being tracked and followed and that sort of thing. So anyway, let's keep going.
And, you know, they can't go to the bank when the restaurant closes. So sometimes they have to take cash to their home. So be really cognizant, business owners, jewelers, any type of business owners that handle cash, be cognizant of your surroundings, particularly Apple AirTags, anything you notice that.
And again, that's only going to work if AirTag detection is only going to work without any sort of direct involvement on your part, only if you have an iPhone. So I would encourage everybody to download those apps, have your loved ones, your parents, grandparents, aunts, uncles, children, nieces, nephews, start scanning, because this is a really cheap, easy poor man's way to conduct surveillance. Not even surveillance, just stalking someone. Had a close personal friend of mine, a very, very good-looking young lady. How good-looking? Yeah, I'd say about an 8.5 out of 10, maybe 8.5 out of 10. And she'd probably get pissed off if she knew I was referring to her as an 8.5, but I think that's a realistic assessment. That's extremely good. That's very, very high up there. And so she noticed that she was getting stalked. Some dude showed up to her day job, and it was a dude she had seen out, but she was like, well, how does he know, this, that, and the other thing? How does he know where I live? And he'd been showing up at places that, that he hadn't been showing up to previously. So we did kind of look into looking at her car. She asked me for some help. I said, okay, I'll see if I can help you out. And we did find a tag on her vehicle. It wasn't an air tag. It was I believe it was a Samsung tracker. This is more than this is like maybe a year and a half, 2 years ago, and I've done several of these since then. But anyway, whatever it was on her car. So here's what we did: we devised a plan, and I talked it over with her. I said, okay, here's what we're going to do. We're going to let this fall off your car. We're not going to let it fall off. We're actually going to take it off your car and leave it in the parking lot. And we did that on a Friday afternoon when she got off work. So it was left there. So the plan was to get this individual into a position where he would want to try to reattach another device. So we left that in the parking lot. Her boss knew what was going on. Everybody kind of just left it there. And, it's funny how you can get people to kind of lend a hand, to a worthy cause. So shout out to them. I won't put their name or their company or anything like that out there, but he was very, very helpful. And I know he's watching this video because he follows me on X, and he also follows me on YouTube. So, while I'm on that note there, please like, subscribe, share, and comment in the comment section below. So he was very, very accommodating, very, very nice about letting us do this. And so, hold on, let me close this out here. And my computer, not my computer, OBS was acting funny. My microphone was acting funny. I recorded several videos yesterday that I couldn't upload because everything just kind of attacked me at the same time. The sound syncing was off. I don't know what was going on. And one of the videos, the longest one I made was like a 30+ minute video. The sound quality was bad and it was low, and so I'm having to make up ground. So I posted an older video yesterday, not because I just wanted to post an old video. I got lazy, but I had to scrap those other videos. I just couldn't use them. The quality was just no good. So to continue the story with this one, all right, not to get too far off into the weeds, it's just a quick, just a quick explanation of what happened yesterday. So, what I did was I personally set up surveillance on her. And so what I did was I watched her. Well, I knew where she was going to park. Downtown Orlando, there's a couple of buildings you can park. I won't say exactly where they are, but you can park for free there, but they're still underground, right? So it's kind of like a tunnel. And so we had her parked there. I parked myself in my car, watching her vehicle, and I also put a drop camera that I could watch remotely on my phone at another location in that particular structure, so that I could see what was going on from different angles, right? So, and I had my own camera in my car as well too. After she gets there, she's probably in there for about an hour and a half, and I noticed an individual approach her vehicle, plant or appear to plant something from the naked eye. I was videotaping them the whole time. And so he walks out. All right. So as he walks out, I wait until he gets clear of the building. I get out. I take up a foot follow. He goes to the club. I'm like, oh, man, great. And so he's in the club. And the whole time he's in the club, he's like watching her with those hungry eyes type look. And so I was like, all right, yeah, this dude is just a weirdo. So I still know some of the bouncers, and I flagged one of them down as, hey, man, you know who this dude is? Yeah, he's over here a lot, man. He's kind of weird. Okay, good. Noted. And so when he left the club, I had that particular bouncer give me a text when he left. I was waiting outside, went outside, followed him, watched him go to his car, and got his tag. So I don't have to follow you home if I can get your tag or any other identifying information. I texted it to my son, who was supposed to be up, but I guess 3 a.m. is, close to 3 a.m. is a little bit, much to ask for, a little bit too much to ask for. So, okay, he wasn't away. I didn't need that information right then and there anyway. And so he leaves, he goes and does his thing. I go back and I talk to her and I said, okay, here's what happened. Here's what's going on. I showed her a picture. She was like, oh, this dude tried to ask for my number a few times. I told him no, told him to get away from me. And I found out later on from one of the other bouncers that he actually got thrown out of this place a couple of months ago because he was harassing a couple of the young ladies. Here's a note, guys. Look, no means no. Go for women that are interested in you. If a woman is not interested in you, so what? It's not a big deal. Walk away, leave her alone, find somebody else. But the whole stalking, harassing things, this is not an ordinary dude. I know this guys, but this is a I don't know the guy, but I'm saying I know this is not an ordinary guy. This is not an ordinary case. But when you do that sort of thing, just understand that there's no way that this young lady is ever going to be interested in you this way. Find women that like you. That's the starting point. That's the secret. To any guy who picks up good-looking girls, they're meeting women that are interested in them. Now, the better looking you are, the bigger that pool of women who are attracted to you will be. Okay, but for the regular guys, normies like us, well, guess what? I'm not a supermodel. I tell everyone all the time, I am not a pretty man. I'm not a beautiful dude. I still do quite well with women. Why? Because I don't try to go to parties I'm not invited to. There's the secret. So, I briefed her what was going on, and she said, well, what do I do? I said, okay, we're going to go back to your car. We're going to take this off. And then that's when I said, look, I'll handle the rest of this. I think you're going to be fine, but we'll see. And so what I did was that's when I reached out to one of my guys, well, a couple of my guys. I have some guys here locally and a couple of other places I call my head breakers. The head breakers are they're typically bouncers, always big dudes, always dudes that, and I kind of assess them. They're guys that are okay with violence, but that's not their first. The first switch they go to. That's not the only switch they have is on and off when it comes to violence. They can, and so what I did was I watched this guy for a while and kind of saw how he lived. And he was a married guy, or he's still married from what I understand. Married guy, couple of kids, but he goes out and hangs out, with his buddies or hangs out at clubs or whatever while his wife is chilling at home. Usually it's the other way around. Usually the wife that's going out and girls' night out, and the dudes that are going out trying to, the wives are trying to go out and pick up dudes, but the dudes are sitting at home watching the babies. But she was doing the opposite. This guy was just a dirtbag, obviously. If he's stalking people and putting Bluetooth on, Bluetooth low energy devices on people's cars, and so that being said, what I did was I built kind of a profile, which is what I'll do with subjects like this. I'll build a profile, say, okay, what is his weak point? And so this guy was also a church guy. He was, I won't say what he did in his church, but he was highly placed in his church, and he was behind the pulpit regularly. He worked at a job where he was very prominent as well, too. And so I determined that I wasn't going to need my head breakers. And what I did was I approached the individual while he was out and about one day. He stopped in at a store. I intercepted him in the parking lot, showed him some stills on my phone, and I was like, hey, let's have a conversation. And so, he was like, well, what do you want? This, that, I'm going to call the police. Okay, well, go ahead and call the police. But if that happens, then I'm going to have to these are going to go in the report, the fact that you planted this Bluetooth low energy device on a young lady's car, that's going to go in the report. All these things will go in the report. Is that what you want? He changed his tune, and he was like, well, what do you want? I was like, look, I'm not here for anything. I don't want anything from you. I said, this happens to be a friend of mine. She is under my protection, and your job from now on is stay away from her. If you happen to be at a club and she shows up at that club, your job is to leave and go to another club. I said, you have a lot to lose, man. You got all this stuff going on. You got a beautiful family at home. You got a great career. A lot of people at your church look up to you. And I threw those in there so he would understand the gravity of what would happen if I put his business in the street. All right. It wasn't my job, it wasn't my intention to mess up his life or put his business in the street. However, he had to leave this friend of mine alone. Now, how good of a friend is she? She's a very good friend. No, I'm not romantically involved with her. It's nothing like that at all. She used to work for me a couple of years ago, and she's had let's just say she's had some issues with some substance abuse issues, but she's seems to be good to go now. She hasn't had a relapse in a couple of years, but because of some of the things that happened with her, she can't work with me anymore. Let's just put it that way. And so, but she's always tried to be helpful whenever I do need help with other things that don't require a license. She has been there, Johnny on the spot, willing to help me. So if you're willing to help me and you're on my team, guess what? I'm going to be a person that helps you out as well too. So, and I have a very, very unique way of helping people out. So when people have problems, they call me and they want, when they have a problem that needs to be solved, I'm extremely good at solving problems. I solve other people's problems on a regular basis. Probably, just a side note, that's probably why I just don't have a lot of tolerance for women who want drama, because I've got to deal with other people's drama when I come home. When I'm not dealing with clients, I don't want more drama. I want peace. I don't get a lot of peace. I don't get a lot of peace, but I want peace at the end of the day, and I don't want to deal with stuff like that. So, but she's a good friend, and she's been there to help me, so I'm going to be there to help her out as well too. So just so you guys don't think I'm not being a simp because she did anything wrong. No, this is actually a friend of mine that I have a connection with, not by blood or by marriage, but she has been helpful to me. So, at the end of the day, me and this guy wound up having a long conversation in the parking lot. We talked for about maybe 30 minutes. And I was like, look, man, whatever you're going through, whatever your deal is, I said, look, you got so much going on. This young lady doesn't like you. What did you think the plan was? And he said, and his whole thing was, I wasn't really thinking. He said, I was just, she's really, really good looking. And I thought if she got to know me better, I said, well, put that out of your head. That's not going to happen. And he understood, and that was this was a while ago, and he has left her alone since then. Now, has he done it to anybody else? I have no idea. I sincerely doubt it. I think I put the fear of God into this guy. Look at it this way, guys. Before you do something really foolish, if guys would just take a moment and do this one thing, or women would do this one thing, but especially guys, do this one thing, and then use that to determine whether or not you should proceed with whatever unwise course of action you're going to undertake. Think of everything you have to lose, okay? And then think, okay, what's the worst case scenario? Am I willing to lose everything I have before I do this thing, whatever the thing is? And if you think about it and you're honest with yourself, that might give you enough time to say, okay, no, I am not willing to lose everything I have. And this is this is kind of what I communicated with him. I said, look how much you have, man. I said, you don't want to lose all this. Look what you have. If your wife divorces you, how much is she getting? Oh my gosh, no prenuptial agreement. And I did ask him that. He was like, she'd take everything. I said, if people at your church found out, what would happen? My reputation would be ruined. If people at your office found out, what would happen? Probably even worse. I'd probably lose my job. Yeah, man. And then you want to wind up getting arrested? You want to wind up in the papers to be immortalized? You want your children to see that? He was like, oh my God, no. I said, okay. I said, so this could represent, and I had this talk with him. I said, this can be a turning point in your life, man. This can be an existential threat, or it can be a profound learning experience and an epiphany that will help you go forward in life in a more positive direction. And his main thing was, man, you're going to tell my wife, you're going to tell this. I said, look, man, I said, my goal is not to destroy your life. That's not why I came here. I said, I was prepared to bring some tough guys to shake you around a little bit if necessary, or at least intimidate you. I said, looking at you, looking at your life, I figured the direct approach myself would be much more prudent and much more productive. Now, could I shake you up myself? Yeah, I could. But, that's not my goal right now. My goal is not to destroy your life. My goal is to protect my friend. She's a friend. She's an asset. So guess what? He backed off, and I think it really did have that talk had a profound effect on his life. And I've had to have talks with people like this before, unfortunately. People do bad things. And I'd rather talk to somebody and try to get them to change course versus dropping the hammer on them and just destroying their lives. Now, that option always, that option is always there. And that has had to happen on more than one occasion, not because that's what I wanted, but because they pushed it in that direction. And so when I talk to guys, it's like, look, man, I talked to one guy, I was like, oh my God, my life is ruined. I said, look, you are the one who wrote this chapter of your life, not me. I was just a consequence. So anyway, like, subscribe, share. If you guys need a private investigator, Russ at privateeyeruss.com. Hit me up. Everything will be linked in the description below. Again, sorry about the redoing of videos, man. But my technology rebelled against me, and the wicked part is that I was just stacking all these videos, and I wasn't rewatching everything right afterwards, and so I had to delete like 9 videos I made that I thought were good to go. And I stacked them up all to be released and had the release dates and everything. Had to go back. I was like, nope, these are no good. So I am trying to improve the content quality for you guys. My main goal is to entertain, but also teach lessons. Next one I'm going to shoot that I shot yesterday, I'm going to shoot again. I think you guys are really going to like. I'm not sure when it's going to be released. It's going to be the story of my first false grape accusation investigation, and the things I found during the course of that investigation will shock and outrage you, or they should. Anyway, it's your boy Private Eye Russ. I will talk to you guys in the next one. I'm out.